Friends, over the past few months, you and I have driven a couple of sedans that are on the opposite ends of the spectrum. On the side that you and I prefer, the Yaguchi-san Special with its almost 500 horsepower, the Lexus GS. On the other end of the spectrum, the Mercedes-Benz E-Classe and the Volvo S90, both with 4 cylinders, both with turbochargers, one with a supercharger. Well, it seems as if Yaguchi-san is borrowing a page out of the Stuttgart und Göteborg playbook. Perhaps we should have a look. So, I feel like we've been here before. As a matter of fact, just a couple days ago, with a Lexus, and that was indeed the case, but it was an RC200t, not a GS200t, which this is. But the engine, it is exactly the same. It's a 2-liter inline 4-cylinder, turbocharged with a twin-scroll turbocharger. It's good for 241 horsepower, which comes in at 5,800 RPM. Somewhat aggressive, but the torque is more interesting to us, and that's 258, which comes in at a very low 1,650 RPM, stays flat all the way up to 4,400 RPM. Now, what's interesting to us is this, up until they decided to pilfer a 4-cylinder from somewhere else in like the Toyota empire, had a V6. And obviously the GSF, which, oh, Santa Maria, Madre de Dios. But the V6 is 311 horsepower, so this is down quite a bit. But the torque, it's only down 22 pound-feet, and it comes in much lower than the V6. The V6, it's somewhere in like the 4s where the peak torque comes in. So you and I need to take this not inconsequential in size car out to the road and see how this surgery of a 4-cylinder works. Welcome to the California Republic, specifically the Malibu Canyons, on a very unusual day. It's cloudy. It never happens out here. I mean, even when it's cloudy out by me or Marine Lair, when I come up here, it's usually sunny. Not the case today, but not complaining because we definitely could use the rain. Just hope it holds out until you and I finish our shooting here. Now, with that, I do need to get out right at the top. This is heavier than that RC200t that we drove just recently. It's about 100 pounds heavier, so know that in terms of, in this case, pushing power because it's rear drive. So with that, let's put our foot into it, and we are in eco mode, and it goes. I mean, there's no doubt about it, it definitely goes. So let's slow down going into this turn a little bit, and let's switch over to just the regular mode. Put our foot into it, going through a very nice, it's funny, it's asking me, please take a rest as I'm driving quickly. Perhaps it misread that. Anyway, we're in regular mode and putting our foot into it, and it really isn't discernible between the eco and the regular mode. But you know, you and I are not here for regular mode or silvery mode. We're here for sport. Put our foot into that. Again, coming around a turn. Let's see what it's like coming out of a turn. So much different. This one, the delivery of power is more rapid. This is where you can believe that torque comes in as low as 1,650 RPM. In the lower 2 modes, you're like, it's more like 2,500. Now let's go into sport mode as the elevation changes present themselves, going around some nice turns here. And this is where I do need to share a bit of full disclosure here. I've driven this car now almost a week. I usually don't shoot these so late in the week, but it was the LA Auto Show, so I've been using this more as a commuter car than to shoot. And I have to tell you, there isn't a significant difference between the Sport and the Sport Plus, but I have noticed. Now, that RC200t, I will admit I drove that car around town, but more west side, around Playa Vista where the studio is, and around home. Now this car, totally different experience. I commuted to and from the LA Convention Center from basically where I live, which is, what, 15 miles in horrible traffic. And that's where, if I'm completely honest, you notice the difference of why you may want a V6. Like, we put our foot into it here, it's still saying please take a rest, but you put our foot into it here and there's plenty of power. It delivers power pretty quickly, but when you're in town and you are trying to, let's just say if you drive like you grew up in New York City, like I did, there's a bit of a hesitation in the delivery of all that torque when you're going from a standstill. When you're going from, what are we doing now, I'm not going to tell you what we're doing now. Let's say we're at speed, put our foot into it. It's almost instantaneous where you're like, oh, maybe I don't need the V6. But when you're in town and you're going from 0 to 30, or you're trying to make passes from 20 to 40, that's where you notice the difference between the V6 and the inline turbo 4. Other than that, you really don't miss the V6, even with 3,800 pounds strapped to it. So good, bad, or indifferent, the rain decided not to hold off. But being that we really need the rain here in the California Republic, and we have some work to do on this GS200t, let's continue our film. That said, driving dynamics. Now this is closely related to the RC200t we just drove. Actually, it's the other way around. The RC200t literally pilfers the whole underneath front clip from this car. So that means a couple of things. Double wishbones in the front, multi-link in the rear. Now you can see by the big F here, this is closely related to the RC200t F Sport that we had. And remember the RC350 F Sport we had? A couple of things change. Number one, the brakes. Now they didn't change in the RC200t, but they did in the 350. Here they do change. So they go from about 13 here and 12.2 back there to 14. The other thing that changes, and this is the biggest, is the dampers are adjustable. And then depending on which GS you actually spec out, like the base GS200, it's 17-inch wheels. The base GS350, 18-inch wheels. But whether it's 200 or 350 and you go to F Sport, it's 19-inch wheels. Now, there's a lot going on there, but how does this all translate out onto the now somewhat wet roads? Okay, so did you guys see that RC200t episode? Same engine, different car. Longer wheelbase here, obviously, a little bit more weight, so it affects going around turns like this. But believe it or not, it's not a mess. Now, let's step back for a minute. Let's go over to the eco mode. I can tell you from the road, knowing the road just up around the corner here, we have a beautiful, nice declining radius turn with an elevation change. We're going to try this in eco mode because I want to demonstrate something to you guys. So I'm putting my foot into it. Please don't try this at home. Brake, 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 brake. Go into the turn. And notice, not breaking a sweat at all. That's where the declining radius part presents itself. And the car is not disturbed at all. Now, let's take this, really unpack this. That RC200t is a shorter wheelbase. It's 100 pounds lighter. In the eco mode, would have completely been disturbed back there. And this is, without us going into all the different modes here, the biggest difference I noticed between this and that RC200t, which is a shorter wheelbase car, in the regular eco mode, you get the composure of at least the Sport and even almost the Sport Plus that you would get in the RC, which I completely didn't expect. Now let's go straight to Sport Plus. Ready? Okay. Forget about Sport. Sport Plus, put our foot into it. Engine works a little bit harder for us. It's stiffer. I feel more confident going into turns like this in this long of a vehicle. A little bit of plow over there, if I'm honest. But there is no squat back there. It's significantly more composed in Sport Plus. But here's the most important thing. I've been driving this thing in regular eco mode all week, the back and forth around town. And normally I like driving cars like this with adjustable dampers in the stiffest setting just to have more composure even in town. And I really needed to do that in the RC200t because it lost a lot of composure in the back in the regular eco mode. Here, it's virtually the same setup. I mean, we talked about this not but a couple of minutes ago, and yet it is more composed back there. I don't know if it's the length of the wheelbase that does that, or that the GS200t has a different set of dampers. I do need to speak to Lexus engineers about this to find it out. But bottom line, this is more usable in the regular mode. Now in the Sport Plus, obviously, it's even that much more confident inspiring, I think is the way to say. I wouldn't call this is not something like a C63S AMG you'd take around corners like this, or anywhere near a 911. It's still like, It is a sports sedan with more of a tinge of sport with the driving dynamics set up in Sport Plus. But here's the big difference. In the RC200t, like I probably would have been over there in eco mode, but in the RC200t, I needed to separate out the engine, the throttle mapping, and the damper mapping. You absolutely, positively need it. Here, do I still want it? Absolutely yes. But here, you don't need it as much because even in the most basic setting, this is still something that a car guy or gal like you and I would want to go around corners like this, but still expose ourselves to the horrible life that is commuting to a place like the Los Angeles Convention Center. Yep, still raining. So why don't we do something we haven't done in a while? A quick round of the options game. 2016 Lexus GS200t F Sport, $45,615. Intuitive Park Assist, $500. Navigation, blah, 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 $1,730. Lexus Safety System with triple beam LED headlamps, $1,795. F Sport Package, some of the stuff we discussed before, $7,670. Santa Maria, Madre de Dios. People, that is a luxury mid-size four-door sedan with a four-cylinder engine. That is $58,000. So now a little bit about the usability of this specific Lexus interior. What is it, 5, 6, 8 films now I've told you? I'm just not a Lexus guy. And I could tell you that because of the way they drive, but here I like the way this car drives. The previous one, I like the way that one drove. And the interiors, I really like what they're doing on the interiors. Granted, this black is just blah. I mean, it is such great detailing, like this like nickel finish here, which is really nice. I love the clock, but it's lost in all this black, and especially when you have contrasting stitching here. And the thing you don't notice when you get into a car that is all this black is you've got this nice soft finish here, which is it real leather? Probably not. But you lose the texture when it's black. I mean, maybe keep that black so you don't get the reflection from the sun. Today is the wrong day to be thinking about this. But keep that black, and then maybe do like a two-tone interior. At least give me a different, like a contrast seat or something like that. Now, just as an aside in terms of UX design, specifically how it should work, I love that there is an old school volume knob and a radio station tune knob. What I have to say there is arigato gozaimasu. And then there's this. Exactly the opposite of what UX should be. When you're driving a 3,800-pound car, this works. You know what this does. You've known what this does for the past 100 years. And your eyes stay on the road. This, not so much. This is disconnected. This feels like Windows 3.1 from like 1995. This is just unsafe and needs to change. Perhaps more buttons. Perhaps what the Panamera does. But this, it's disconnected. This is the one thing about Lexus interiors I think really needs to be rethought. And then last but not least, look. My complaint about the edge-to-edge screen, it looks like they already fixed it in the 1 week since I've made that film. Here, this is an exact example of what I'm looking for here. In today's day and age, this is what you want, and kind of this is what you need, especially when you're going to integrate, which I don't know when Toyota and Lexus is going to do this, when you're going to integrate Android Auto and Apple CarPlay. Think about all of the icons on Apple CarPlay or Android Auto, whichever way you roll. Think of them on an array that long. I mean, wide, I should say. Wow, that would be totally cool. Other than that, this is just, I gotta tell you, I've really enjoyed my time in this car because it is such a pleasant place to be. Again, being pedantic, lighter color interior, and perhaps I'm admitting that I'm an old man, but I'd like to see some like satin finish wood instead of this stupid like carbon fiber with this tessellation on it. Other than that, it's a damn great place to be. So in summary, what do we got? Well, it is still raining, it is much harder, and the ominous clouds have come in, so this is incredibly dark. Thus, let's make this quick. I like this. The 4-cylinder transition to the GS200t actually works. I will say there is a reservation now. I have spent the time driving this in very bad traffic and using it where I didn't use the RC200t. So perhaps this is a revision to that film and an asterisk to this one. This works if you don't drive like a New Yorker in traffic. If you do, there's a little bit of hesitation. Is it really that big of a deal? Depends on how anxious you are to get where you are going. Other than that, this engine works incredibly well in most scenarios and delivers torque a bit sooner than the V6. Fuel economy, if I'm honest here, not a huge difference. The combined ratings is only about 1 mpg off the rear-wheel drive V6. So I don't think you're really looking at this for an mpg savings. Actually, it's not even a weight savings, so this is a little bit more than the V6. I don't know how that happened. In any event, perhaps it's a dollars thing. And that's where I need to turn this around to you guys. We did play a very short round of the options game here, and we did that for a very specific reason, because of the question I want to ask you. You and I, over the past, 6 months, have driven the new E300. We've driven the new S90. Both very similar equations to this. A mid-size luxury sedan with a 4-cylinder turbocharged engine. Now, from looks alone, love the S90. But I'm not asking you about looks. I'm asking you about pure numbers. What would you choose if you could only choose, and this is very specific parameters, 4-cylinder turbocharged engine? You can't go for the E43. 4-cylinder turbocharged engine to this 4-cylinder turbocharged engine to the 4-cylinder turbocharged and supercharged engine in the S90. Which one you would choose and why you would choose it. Because really, this comes down to dollars and cents. Let me know in the comments below or via our social media, MotoManTV all one word, MotoManTV all one word, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And with that, I want to leave you with 2 things. Number 1, make sure you download our fancy new mobile application, which you could download for free at Apple iTunes, Google Play. And oh, by the way, we are live on 5, count 'em, 5 international airlines. And number 2, a fun fact. Yes, it kind of sucks that it has literally rained on our parade here, but for the California Republic that has been in a serious drought, this is actually very, very good news. To give you an idea of how long it's been since rain like this, granted, it's not really raining very hard right now, but when I left my home this morning, you would swear a man in a robe with a long beard and a very large boat and a lot of animals was going to come pick me up. Not this car. That kind of rain I haven't seen since, I want to say maybe late June or July, so a really long time. So this is my way of saying thank you for the rain, and hopefully you can see this. Until it's sunny again in beautiful California, Bishpeta.